Welcome to The Honeydoomers, the podcast where two newly married horror movie lovers discuss the genre's iconic, obscure, and just plain absurd films. I'm Sky.
And I'm Joe.
And we're The Honeydoomers. All right, everyone, welcome to our podcast. So, a little bit about us. We were just married in September of 2020.
I put a ring on it.
And we love horror movies. So our first official date was actually to see Sinister 2 in theaters. We also have a dog named Georgie, and he is named after the character in It, the little kid that is killed at the very beginning, because we love him very much and we don't want him to die, but it was just such a cute name.
he's not chasing any paper boats down the drain, so we don't have to worry.
And it was just so cute how Pennywise says it. Hiya, Georgie. It's just so cute. And so, anyway, so he's our baby. And anyways, what this podcast is going to be is us talking about different horror movies. We're going to go through some interesting facts, a little bit about the cast, and then we're going to go through the movie and talk about what we liked about it, anything we found interesting in the movie, and then, of course, give a rating of it to make sure you guys know whether it's worth seeing or not, whether it's a good date night movie, if it's so bad it's good, you know, the different things that a horror movie can be.
Yeah, we realized that, horror movies are something that we bond over, and during these times especially, we've had a lot of time to watch different movies, a lot of horror movies, so stay tuned.
And a lot of duds too, so Don't worry. We've seen a lot that were not good, and we will definitely go through those too. So
yeah, so let's jump into this.
Yeah, so we're going to start with Psycho, the original by Alfred Hitchcock, because it is just so iconic to horror and what horror is today, and I'm so excited because I love this movie so much. So Psycho came out in 1960. Of course, it was directed by Alfred Hitchcock, as I said, and the screenplay was by Joseph Stefano. So let's go through a few of the cast. So Anthony Perkins played Norman Bates. He, of course, became best known for this role and was often typecast because of the character. He went on to star in other films, including the Psycho sequels, Psycho 2, 3, and 4. He passed away in 1992 at the age of 60.
Kind of young.
Yeah, I know. Kind of sad.
Yeah.
Vera Miles played Lila Crane. She was also best known for this role, which she reprised in Psycho 2. She had other movie and television roles, and she is still alive at 91 and single after having been married and divorced 4 times.
Oh.
Yes. Janet Leigh was Marion Crane, Lila's sister. She received most recognition for her role as Marion, including a Golden Globe Award and an Oscar nomination. In 1961, the year after Psycho, she married Tony Curtis. The two divorced a year later, but they did have a child together, and that was Jamie Lee Curtis, who, of course, goes on to be the horror queen in the Halloween franchise, as well as Prom Night and The Fog. Janet Leigh actually starred with her daughter in The Fog, as well as Halloween H2O, which was a later installment to the Halloween franchise. Leigh died in 2004 at the age of 77.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of horror acting in that bloodline.
Yeah, a lot. 2 major scream queens, which is amazing. So yeah. I love learning stuff like that. It just makes me happy. And then finally, we have John Gavin as Sam Loomis, who is Marion's boyfriend. He had many prominent roles around this time, is probably the most famous actor at this time from this movie. He was in Spartacus as well as others. So he passed away in 2018 at the age of 86. All right, so let's jump into some interesting trivia and facts about the movie.
All those things you want to Google while you're watching the movie.
Yeah, well, and there's so many interesting ones in this one. It is, of course, widely considered the earliest slasher film. In my opinion, in the opinions of many others, it really created that subgenre of horror. It's Hitchcock's first horror film. I feel like Hitchcock became really well known for horror when in actuality, he only really did 2 horror films, Psycho and The Birds. Most of his other films were psychological or spy thrillers.
Yeah, things like Vertigo.
North by Northwest, and I always feel that he's synonymous with horror when really he was more synonymous with thriller.
Mm-hmm.
The film originally received mixed reviews, but it had a lot of box office success. It actually earned $40 million against its $800,000 budget. And so critics reevaluated it, and it was then nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Director for Alfred Hitchcock, Best Supporting Actress for Janet Leigh, and Best Cinematography and Art Direction in the Black and White category.
It's just something that wouldn't happen today.
No, they don't care. They don't care what we think of movies anymore.
They don't care about the audience.
Yeah, they just, they won't reevaluate because of stuff like that.
Yeah, success doesn't equal good in their minds.
And yeah, horror movies that get nominated for those awards.
Does that happen anymore?
If you consider Parasite a horror, which I'm not sure I do, but it's a great movie. I don't know if it's a horror. Anyways, so Psycho did a lot for the horror genre, though. It set a new precedent for violence, deviant behavior, and sexuality in film.
Yeah, it got really, really raunchy.
Yes, it did, especially for that time. I mean, it showed 2 characters that were kind of half naked in bed together. A lot of those half naked scenes with a woman in her bra, a flushing toilet, which at that time was weird, the shower scene, violence. It was all...
First time ever.
Yeah, well...
Flushing a toilet, right?
Mainstream in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which we'll talk about that later because it's actually really funny because it's not what you think. But... and because of all of this stuff, it had a lot of censorship, especially in international releases. They had to censor a lot of those scenes for audiences, which means that a lot of people saw different versions of Psycho. Psycho was based on the 1959 book by Robert Bloch of the same name, and that book was loosely based on Ed Gein. So Ed Gein was a murderer and grave robber from Wisconsin who would make furniture and clothing out of human skin. And he said that he would wear the skin so that he could pretend to be his deceased mother. So he clearly was very
stand-up
well.
Guy.
Yeah, he had a lot going for him.
Yeah.
He also inspired other films and villains, including the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, that's kind of where my mind went with
immediately
this.
With the furniture. He also inspired Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, which I think that's a much looser interpretation because I understand the connection to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, and to Psycho. Not Buffalo Bill was definitely a creep, but it seemed a little different.
Yeah.
Psycho actually had 3 sequels. I have never seen them. All of them were produced after Hitchcock's death.
Was he rolling in his grave with these?
It makes me wonder. I mean, I didn't even realize that there were sequels. And it makes me wonder, like, are they going to ruin it if I watch it? Is it going to make me not want to? Because Anthony Perkins was in all of them. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to watch something that makes me think badly of him.
Yeah.
And so the last of which was actually a made-for-TV prequel. And Anthony Perkins not only was in all 3 sequels, he also directed Psycho 3. We may give them a try somewhere down the road when I build up the capacity to know they might not be very good.
Maybe.
Yeah. There was also a remake of Psycho in 1998. It was directed by Gus Van Sant, and Norman Bates was played by Vince Vaughn.
Oh.
Julianne Moore also starred in the movie, and honestly, it is nearly shot-for-shot identical to the original. It did not do well commercially or with critics. I have seen it. I mean, it truly is shot-for-shot. It used a lot of the same dialogue, and it was kind of just like pointless to be made.
What's the draw to that movie?
I don't know. Psycho in color, which I think part of the appeal of Psycho is the black and white. So I really don't know, but it exists if you want to see it. And then finally, actually there was also a 2012 biopic titled Hitchcock, which dove into Hitchcock's life in the making of Psycho. It starred Anthony Hopkins, who of course is Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, as Hitchcock. Helen Mirren was his wife, and Scarlett Johansson played Janet Leigh. Now, I've never seen this, but honestly, that sounds like a great cast, great source material. I'd love to see it. Definitely not a horror movie, but still very interesting. And then finally, in 2013, there was a television series based off of Psycho called Bates Motel. It aired on A&E. It starred Freddie Highmore as a teenage Norman Bates. Freddie Highmore is an English actor. He was Charlie from the 2005 Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. He also is in an ABC show right now called The Good Doctor.
Yeah, he's quite the television actor, I'd say.
He is he does a really good job of adopting an American accent, which he has to do for The Good Doctor and he had to do for Bates Motel as well.
He's always kind of playing that,
seemingly innocent. Like he has
seemingly
a very
innocent, but a little bit odd.
Yeah, definitely.
Norman Bates, of course.
Yeah, and I actually watched a lot of the show, and it was pretty decent. I didn't finish it. It ran until 2017, where it ended like right before the Psycho film would have began. So kind of just like leading up to Psycho. One more thing, Norma Bates, Norman's mother, was played by Vera Farmiga, who is, of course, Lorraine Warren from the Conjuring franchise. So she is definitely familiar with horror and those type of roles. So, and she did great. I mean, it was a great show. It had a good run for sure.
Yeah, definitely a nice little run of 4 years.
Yeah, which is all you need for that. All right, so while those were mostly like the remakes or things that used the Psycho material, there are also horror movies that have taken inspiration from Psycho. So in Halloween, Dr. Samuel Loomis is actually named after Sam Loomis from Psycho. His nurse, Marion Chambers, was named after Marion Crane, of course, and Sheriff Al Chambers, who is the sheriff in Psycho. In Scream, Billy Loomis was named after Sam Loomis. And in the 1976 film Carrie, the high school's name was changed from Ewan High School from Stephen King's book to Bates High School after Bates Motel and Norman Bates. So a lot of people have paid homage to Psycho and recognize what it's done for the genre.
Definitely.
All right, so let's jump into the movie, go through what happens. Spoiler alert from this point forward. We honestly have maybe already given away things that you didn't know, but yeah, let's get into it. So the very first scene, it opens, of course, with Marion Crane and Sam Loomis and their lovers, half naked in bed, immediately setting the tone that this movie is going to break some traditional rules that have been set in film.
Yeah, we open up to a sandwich on the...
a sandwich on the counter that they mentioned for no reason.
Yeah.
It's also, we know it's in Phoenix, and during this scene, we find out a lot about what is going to set forth all of the events, basically. So Sam and Marion right now are just in, I guess, like an affair stage. They're not really a couple because Marion lives in Phoenix, Sam lives in California, and Sam has a lot of debt. He lives out of his hardware store. He owes alimony to his ex-wife, and he just cannot afford to give Marion the life that he thinks she deserves.
You can't be seen in public with those people.
Yeah, no, not the poor.
Yeah.
And so, so anyways, that's basically their biggest problem right now. So after that scene, Marion goes to work because we find out that this was an extended lunch period, but we also find out that it was 2:43 in the afternoon, which that is the longest extended lunch I've ever heard of in my entire life. I don't know how she got away with it, but she does return to work eventually. And in this scene where she returns to work, we actually see a man on the sidewalk. You see basically just the side of his face and his hat and coat. That is, of course, Alfred Hitchcock. So he would make a lot of cameos in his films and people knew to look out for him. And so he decided to make his cameo earlier in Psycho so that people would not be looking for him instead of paying attention to the plot. Also in this scene, we meet Marion's coworker Caroline, who is played by Pat Hitchcock, Alfred's daughter.
I wonder how she got that role.
I know. Who knows? It's
a mystery.
Yeah, so in the office, Marion's boss, Mr. Lowry, and a client named Mr. Cassidy comes in. And Mr. Cassidy is... I don't know if they say he's from Texas, but I imagine he's from Texas. He's kind of got a southern accent, wears the cowboy hat, and talk real tough.
Real Doug Dimmadome type of character.
Yes, absolutely. And He is paying $40,000 cash to buy a house for his daughter as a wedding gift.
Yeah, because they're at like a mortgage broker.
Or real estate, something in that realm. It's not 100% spelled out, and it seems like an odd way of doing business compared to how it's done now.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he shows up with straight cash.
$40,000 cash in an envelope, hands it to Marion, who has to take it to the bank. But while he's there, he gives Marion a spiel about, my daughter has never been unhappy a day in her life because I can buy off unhappiness.
Basically how great money is and,
Yeah, and how it can solve all your problems, which of course gets Marion to thinking about not so good things.
The wheels are turning.
Yeah, and so Mr. Cassidy and Mr. Lowry go into the office, and Marion immediately jumps up from her desk, goes into the office with them and says, I need to take the rest of the day off because I have a headache. I'll take this cash to the bank on my way home. Wink, wink.
Yep.
And so, very next scene, we see Marion is in her apartment, again, in her bra. And
you get home, you gotta undress.
Take that shirt off, yep. Yeah. And the money is on her bed. And also a suitcase.
So she didn't take it straight to the bank.
Yes, it is not at the bank. She is packing a suitcase. No headache in sight. And so, one thing to give this a little perspective, this was in 1960. So $40,000 in 1960 is worth $350,000 in today's money.
Yeah, and I actually just looked up, what kind of houses you can buy in Phoenix now with 350 grand. They're pretty nice houses.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good amount of money. That's more than I think the average houses in America right now.
Oh, definitely.
So it's a lot of money. And this was actually the same amount that Anthony Perkins was paid for his role in this movie, which is kind of funny. So anyways,
the 40,000 or the 300?
The 40,000, which is worth now 350,000. Which is why he kept doing them, I guess.
Heck yeah.
So very next scene, Marion is driving. We realize she's taking off with the money. And honestly, she's thinking, my life is so good. She's imagining telling Sam, having this money, and being able to basically get the happy life she wanted.
Yeah, because he's living in Fairville, California.
Fairville, California, yes. So she comes to a stoplight, and as she's sitting at the stoplight, her boss walks by her, and they make eye contact. And suddenly her fantasy kind of goes away, and she realizes, oh my gosh, I'm kind of caught. But, the scene just continues. He keeps walking, she keeps going. Honestly, the most he is thinking is, oh, she kind of like played hooky from work, which he had already done at her extended lunch.
Yeah, I mean, he's given her a lot of leeway here.
But she obviously, of course, is kind of paranoid about it. But she just keeps driving, and eventually she pulls over to the side of the road and goes to sleep. As she's...
the normal thing to do.
Yeah, she's not very chill about the whole situation. She's not very good at it.
Smooth criminal.
Yeah. And so she is woken up in the morning by a cop who parks behind her and knocks on her window. Before even trying to talk to the cop, she first tries to just drive off, which is so suspicious and weird. And the cop is like, no, you have to talk to me. And basically he gets her ID and her license plate, which now she's worried.
And what is he doing with that? Like, what did police do?
Just wrote it on a notepad.
Back then, there was no computer.
They did they had the carbon paper. Yeah. They copied it.
He would have to run back to the office real quick and
check the files.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what he did with that information other than write it down and just see if he saw it again. But anyway, so for a little bit, and then he lets her go because, I mean, what's he going to do? She wasn't breaking any laws. For a little bit, he follows her, and she's freaking out about that. But then he pulls off, and she eventually ends up at a used car lot because she realizes, well, now I'm in California. A cop has my plates. I need to get a car with California plates. As she's doing that, though, like as soon as she pulls into the lot, the cop pulls up and parks on the street right across from the lot, gets out of his car, just stands there and stares at her. So weird. And honestly, kind of unnecessary. I don't think she was that suspicious. I mean, what does he think she's doing?
Yeah. buying a used car can't be that suspicious.
Yeah. And so, anyways, and she does act super suspicious at this car lot, though, because she's like rushing it along, like, I'm in a hurry. I need this car.
She's like, I want that one.
Yeah, this one. Do you want to drive it? Nope. This one's good. She pays $700 for the car plus her trade-in. So $700 is about $6,000 today. So not bad. It was a 1957 Ford Custom 300, by the way, just so everyone knows if that's the car you want.
Nice, normal car, I would imagine. I mean, it was a Ford.
It looked just like the car she traded in. I mean, it looked the exact same. It just had different plates. So as she's about to leave, though, and of course, just in case you didn't get it, that $700 was, of course, from the $40,000 that she had.
Yeah.
The cop is pulling into the lot as she's about to leave, so she's like, oh, I gotta get out of here. She guns it. It's stopped immediately by people yelling because she left her suitcase and coat in her other car. And that is just so, it's like you want to shake her, like, you are being so suspicious right now.
Breathe in.
Yeah, just
breathe out.
Take a breath, Marion.
Yeah.
It's all okay. Like, because at this point, even though you know she's doing a bad thing, you're like, oh, kind of rooting for her. Like, you can do it. Get out of this. Like, get out of this situation. But anyways, as she drives off, the cop and the used car salesman and like an employee are all just staring at her because she's being so weird. And she drives for a little bit. And during this drive, she imagines like her paranoia is running crazy. She's just imagining people figuring her out. Well, it starts to pour down rain and it's late, and she realizes, I need to get a motel this time rather than park on the side of the road. And she sees this sign for a motel. But it's not just any motel. It's Bates Motel. So she pulls in, and she gets out of her car to go to the office. But how does she get out of her car?
She scoots and exits the car out of the passenger door.
Yes.
And that I had to say something as we were watching because I pick up on little things like that, and it just bothered me.
Yeah, because cars then, or at least her car, I'm assuming it wasn't common for them to have center consoles like we do today. It was just like a bench seat, like a truck would have. She just scoots on over, gets out the passenger door instead of going out the driver door.
I mean, I will give it to her. It was raining.
It was raining, but this will come up again when there is no rain.
Yes.
And so she does that. There's no one in the office. She looks at a house because it's a small motel and then a house kind of on the hill. And she sees a figure of an old woman in the house, like in the window. So she honks her horn really loud, and suddenly someone comes running, and it is a man, and he introduces himself as Norman Bates. And so he checks her into the hotel. He actually lets her know that she's only 15 miles from Fairvale, which honestly, if I had been told that, I would have been like, well, I'm just going to leave. I apologize, but why would you stay at the hotel if you were only 15 miles from your end destination?
Yeah.
It's just so crazy. And I mean, honestly, it makes it even creepier based on what happens afterwards. But anyway, so when she signs the guest book, we notice that she signs it as Marie Samuels, which is not her name. Her name is Marion Crane. And she also says that she's from Los Angeles. So she's trying to make this criminal thing work. I am Marie Samuels. I am from LA. So he shows her to her bedroom. And honestly, just to describe the way he acts, he's so innocent and
boyish,
charming.
Yeah.
Like it comes off in a charming way, even though he's awkward. You want to like this man because he seems sweet. So, and he invites her to have dinner with him at the house that we saw. And so while she's getting ready in her room and he's in the house, we're assuming he's preparing the dinner or whatever, we start to hear a conversation, which it's incredible that we can even hear this conversation from her room, because we're hearing it as if we're Marion in her hotel room with the window open from the house that's on the hill up from the hotel. And we hear a woman yelling. And we're assuming, I guess, this is the woman who we saw in the window. And she's yelling at Norman, basically accusing Marion, who she has not met, of being a hussy. She's just trying to seduce you.
She knows that she takes her clothes off.
Yeah, yes, she does. She knows that she is often seen in a bra and a slip.
Yeah.
And so, and Marion hears this. We also hear that, we realize it's his mother because we hear Norman talking back and saying mother, things like that. So the next time we see Norman, he is bringing out the food to Marion to say, basically they can't eat it up at the house because his mother is very awful. And Marion agreed. They eat in the parlor of the hotel because Norman refuses to go into her room. Like, because she invited.
Seduced.
Yeah, I know. He's scared of that because she invited him to eat it in her room with her. He says, no, let's eat it in the parlor.
Yeah, the not creepy at all parlor.
Yes, the parlor that is filled with stuffed birds, which she immediately comments on. And Norman talks about his taxidermy hobby. And honestly,
yeah, he's not really interested in birds as much as the taxidermy part.
which is funny because there are pictures of birds in her hotel room.
Yeah.
So you almost wonder if he's lying or if he's just, why would you have pictures of birds then? But so they have or their dinner, and first of all, there are a lot of weird things that happen in this. But firstly, he says, "Oh, I'm not even hungry," and just watches her eat. That would be so awkward and weird with a stranger.
Yeah.
Also, wouldn't you think, "Oh my God, he poisoned this"? Why would you invite me to dinner where you're not going to eat?
He brought down milk, right?
He brought down milk and sandwiches.
Was milk like a common drink back then?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think milk was just...
How often are you just drinking milk?
I feel like milk was very highly marketed in the 50s and 60s as like the drink to have with food. I couldn't imagine drinking milk with dinner. It would be disgusting.
Just
I don't know how
gross.
we used to drink milk with lunch at school.
No.
But yeah, and also the very first bite she takes, like she takes it and immediately says, "Oh, you eat like a bird." One bite in, and he's already commenting on how she's eating, which is so strange. But then he follows that up with, "Actually, birds eat quite a lot."
Yeah. If there's one thing they teach you to flirt with a woman, it's to make fun of how much she eats.
Maybe he's trying to make sure she doesn't seduce him. Like, I need to make sure she knows I'm not interested. You aggressively eating bird. Like, but they continue to have a conversation, and she kind of brings up the mother because she heard their argument and, talks about why is he still there, blah, blah, blah. And he starts defending his mother and actually gets quite upset about it. And during this whole interaction, he utters a couple of very iconic lines from the movie. The first is, of course, "A boy's best friend is his mother." And he utters that a little creepily. And you start to realize there's a little bit at play here with Norman.
Yeah, sir, you're like in your 20s, right?
I mean, I think he's older than that. I don't know how old he's supposed to be. He looks like he's in his 30s.
Yeah.
Maybe 20s, I don't know. Everyone looked older back then.
Definitely doesn't have that mentality.
Yeah, and
Comes out a little bit.
Yeah, and especially when he starts really defending the mother, and he says it's like an illness, and he gets, she can't help it. He also talks about the fact that she had a lover who had convinced her to buy the motel, and she went like mad after the lover died, and he goes, especially the way he died. But then he doesn't describe it because Marion's eating, and it would be too gross. And then he, of course, utters the other famous line, "She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes."
It's just another thing you want a stranger to tell you.
I know. And what's so great, I feel like this is just a moment where Anthony Perkins is just so great during that whole scene. He plays it off so, so well. So anyways, during this entire time, because the conversation went in a lot of different directions, and Norman is honestly kind of being judgy, but acting like he's not being a judgmental person and basically making assumptions about her, she kind of starts to regret having stolen the money, basically. And we realize that because of their conversation. And as soon as she gets up, she tells him, "Oh, I'm driving to Phoenix and I'm going to leave very early tomorrow." But she doesn't just say she's driving to Phoenix. She says she's driving back to Phoenix. And you can tell Norman kind of questions this since she had told him that she was from Los Angeles earlier.
Yeah, it basically reveals that she's
Lying.
untrustworthy to some extent.
Which I think he had already thought that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why, yeah. Anyways, and so she also tells him, because he says Miss, and she says, oh, Crane. Well,
Not Samuels.
yes, she had signed the book Marie Samuel. So as soon as she leaves, because she has to leave early in the morning, so she goes to bed, Norman goes and looks at the guest book, of course, and sees that she had written that she is Marie Samuels from Los Angeles. Well, whoever was just talking to him was a Miss Crane from Phoenix. So he realized that she is obviously not trustworthy. So what does he do? He goes back into his parlor, removes a picture from the wall to reveal a peephole.
A peephole.
Peephole. And he is staring at Marion, who is now in her bra again, a black bra this time, before they had been white.
Mm-hmm.
So it was extra sexy, extra evil, and hussy-ish. And so watches her. Basically, all he sees is her in her bra, and then she puts a robe on.
Yeah.
And then he stops. And we also, then he goes back up to the house, is what, we basically see. When Marion is in her room, what she is doing is calculations in a notebook, because she has spent some of the money at this point. She spent it on the car, and that's really it, right? Because we learned that at this time, you usually paid for the hotel after staying rather than up front.
Yeah.
And so all she has paid for at the time is the car. So she has in her calculation 40,000 minus 700, written like she had to actually
do the math,
like carry the one.
Yeah.
And I find it so funny, even though I understand it's just how they're telling the story, but you would never have to do that math on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And so she, as soon as she does the math, because she has to figure out then how to make that money back, basically, so that she can hide what she had done, she rips up the piece of paper, and this is the toilet scene, flushes the paper down the toilet.
Yeah, because
that's too much. So this was the first time in mainstream U.S. Media that we would see a toilet flush, which is crazy to think about.
And it's too much for audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to see a toilet flush if there were things in it that were not paper, but...
I mean, yeah, I don't want to see that now.
But it is kind of funny that that's what everyone got up in arms about, her flushing paper down the toilet.
Flushing toilet down the paper?
Yeah. So anyways, so she takes a shower. And if anyone has seen Psycho or knows anything about Psycho, or honestly any horror movie, do not get in a shower.
Don't get naked.
Don't get naked, yeah. And she is now not only naked, she is in a shower. And while she's in the shower, we see the figure of a woman who, of course, we assume at this point is Norman's mother, because who else is there? And the woman starts stabbing her and kills her.
And we get that scream. We get that turnaround.
The scream. It's such a good scene. So well done. Obviously, you don't see knife pierce the skin. This is 1960, but you do see knife hit the skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see knife against skin. We just don't see the pierce. There's blood. She... crashes, pulls down the shower curtain. There's blood on the tub. So because this was black and white, they actually used chocolate syrup for blood because it looked better on black and white. I thought they could have gone harder with the blood. It didn't really look like enough blood, but I'm also used to horror movies now where it's way too much blood. So maybe, I don't know, a happy medium could have been reached, because this is like, there's no way she would have died with that much blood, but I get we don't want to paint the entire room with blood. So at this point, we then hear, we see the house, and we can't see what's going on in the house, but we hear Norman screaming like, "Mother, the blood, you're covered in blood." And so he comes down, sees what has happened, and for a minute he freaks out. He's definitely like, oh God, how could this have happened? And then kind of just like a switch flips, and he's like, I had to clean this up. Gets a mop.
Cleaning time.
Yeah, gets a mop, cleans it all up, wraps her in the shower curtain, puts her into the trunk of the car, puts all of her stuff into the car, including the $40,000. So at this point, she had wrapped it in a newspaper so that people wouldn't know what it was. He has no idea there's $40,000 in that newspaper. He
thinks
just
it's
throws it in.
an extra heavy newspaper.
Yeah, because it had to have been so heavy if it had that much money in it. But he was like, nope, throw it in. We're getting rid of this. Dumps the car in the swamp, or what looks like a swamp.
Yeah, and we get that scene where the car like stops midway. It made me chuckle a little bit because, you know, it had that piercing noise like, oh my gosh, is the car going to go down in the swamp? Mm-hmm. So we watch Norman kind of freak out a little bit about that, but then it sinks.
Yeah, and the entire time we're in scenes like this with Norman where it's like him doing these weird things. He's like eating candy. You can see him chewing, and then later you actually see the bag of mints or candy or whatever
mints.
It is, which is so odd and so childish.
Yeah.
It's very much like a child and so great. Like such an odd and great detail. So anyways, after this has happened, first of all, this is like stunning because Marion Crane has been the main character up until this point and now dead.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Just dead.
Just like 30 minutes into the movie, I'd say she's gone.
Yeah, gone. And we've been rooting for her and dead. So anyways, very next scene, we of course open up to Sam Loomis in his hardware store. It looks like he's writing a letter to Marion. And Lila Crane comes in. This is the first time we've been introduced to Lila Crane. We've actually heard about her because she's Marion's sister, but we've never seen her. By the way, Lila Crane and Marion, those actresses, gorgeous.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So beautiful. But they come in, or Lila comes in and is asking Sam if Marion is there. And the whole time she's doing that, we see this like odd man looking in, and then suddenly he just barges into their conversation and says, you know, I'm also looking for Marion. And we find out that this is a private investigator who was hired to find Marion because of the money she stole.
Arbogast.
Milton Arbogast.
You know, just every private investigator has to have some
yes
crazy cool name like that.
Yes, and yeah, and that weird persona, and that's who he is, and he's great. He does it very well. And so we find out that Marion is not with Sam. Obviously, we know that, but yes, we all find it out now. Marion is not with Sam. Well, he has reason to believe she's in Fairvale. So we see, you know, Arbogast asking around, you know, trying to figure out where she is. Well, Arbogast ends up at Bates Motel, which this is pretty believable because Bates Motel is 15 miles from Fairvale.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what standard practice is, but you're probably looking around a 20-mile radius of where you think the person would be.
Yeah, and I don't know much about Fairvale, but it's probably not a huge city, so he probably got through the actual town itself pretty quickly and is now on the outskirts. Well, how does he get out to go into the office of Bates Motel?
Out the damn side door, not
the
driver's
passenger
side,
door.
the
He does the
side.
scoot. He does the scoot. That's what we're gonna call it. He gets out by scooting instead of just opening his door. It's so funny that they made that just.
Yeah, so there's actually no such thing as Fairvale.
Okay, I wondered that.
It was made up, so we can just assume it was a small town.
Yeah, because sometimes he makes, you know, sometimes it's made up, sometimes it's not. So yeah, I think we assume it's a fairly small town. Anyways, he questions Norman a little bit, and Norman is also not good at crime. Clearly, he is just like Marion. He's so bad.
He was doing so well for the first couple minutes of the conversation, and then it just.
And then the second he was caught in any kind of lie, it just went completely south. And suddenly he's like, oh, it's all coming back to me, like I'm like a dream. I can see it right here, like a vision.
Yeah,
it's so funny, and because Milton or Arbogast, whatever we're gonna call him. Arbogast, I guess, looks in the guest book and sees that she has signed her name Marie Samuels. He knows that that's her because one, he brought a handwriting sample to look at, and also Sam is obviously Marion's boyfriend. You just kind of put the pieces together.
Yeah, Norman screwed up too because he also said no one has been there for the past 2 weeks.
And this was like 2 days ago that she had checked in, so he should have known.
Mm-hmm. And Arbogast, of course, knows this right away, that must be the fake name that she's going by, because he is a private investigator.
He's very good.
Yeah.
He's very good at what he does. So anyways, Norman starts acting very suspicious and talks about her a little bit, but doesn't obviously say what we all know and what happened. So he offers to take Arbogast to the cabins with him. He First, we see him skip cabin 1 very intentionally.
I mean, didn't he kind of touch the doorknob and like look back at Arbogast and like kind of be like in his head? You can tell him like, "Oh no, don't go in there. That's where."
Yes, that's where this all happened. Yeah. And so, which I don't know why, because he cleaned it up. But yeah, so he immediately like acts like, "Oh, I'm not going to go in there." Well, Arbogast sees this, but he kind of stays back and looks at, and realizes that there's a house there, and he sees the figure in the window, Norman's mother, and he's like asking questions about her. Did she meet Marion? Norman kind of slips up and makes it seem like the mother had met Marion, which we know she hadn't. But that makes Arbogast like, well, I absolutely have to talk to her. They get into kind of a fight because Norman says, absolutely not. You're not going to talk to her. So Arbogast just leaves. He calls Lila and basically tells her everything that he knows. This is just a scene where to basically make sure that we understand that Lila and Sam have all the information.
Yeah.
So after he calls them and tells them everything, like about the motel, he goes back, tries to talk to the mother, goes into the house because he can't find Norman.
Well, because he thinks that Marion might be paying.
That's right. Yes, so he doesn't suspect necessarily like the kind of suspicious behavior we knew happened. He suspects that Marion is paying Norman to hide her.
Which is
because of the money, which is very obviously what you would conclude as a PI knowing the information he does, I think, and how Norman is acting. But knowing the information we know, we obviously know what happened.
Yeah.
So anyways, he goes into the house and we see him walk up the stairs. But as soon as he reaches the top of the stairs, out pops Norman's mother, stabs him. We see a splash of blood across his face, and he falls down the stairs.
Very
and we're
dramatically,
following him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're following him down the stairs and then lands. And then Norman's mother rushes down and just stabs him. And
dead.
So Arbogast is gone. He's out of the picture. And that's why that phone call scene was so important. Because now Sam and Lila have the information they need to do the work that Arbogast is now not available for. So Lila tells Sam everything. They haven't heard from Arbogast. Sam decides to go out to the motel. No one's there. He's just calling and calling. Well, Norman is at the swamp again.
Yeah.
Sinking Arbogast in his car.
Yeah.
And again, he's eating the candies. Sam goes back having not even spoken to Norman because Norman was at the swamp, pretended like he couldn't hear Sam because he actually did hear Sam, but he was hiding from him basically. So what happens then is that they decide to go to the sheriff or the deputy sheriff, Al Chambers. They go to his house to tell him because Lila is a very good sister and is like, I am not going to rest until we find Marion.
Loses confidence in Arbogast.
Absolutely.
Wants to do it all on her own now.
Yes. But she loses confidence in him, but does not necessarily not believe what he had said, which we find out later. Because they tell the sheriff what's going on, and they tell the sheriff what Arbogast had told him about the mother. Like, he wanted to talk to the mother. Well, the sheriff and his wife kind of beat around the bush about this a little bit, but then they say, Arbogast is lying to you. He probably went after it himself instead of telling you because of the money. And they're like, no, he wasn't lying. They said, we know he's lying because Norman's mother has been dead for 10 years. We picked out the dress she was buried in and everything. And we're like, what? What? Who is this woman?
Yeah.
Or who's the woman that's buried?
And then they reveal the story that Norman didn't want to tell Marion.
Yes, which was that Norma had caught her lover cheating or something like that and then poisoned him and herself.
He was married. He had like a whole...
Yes, she found out he was still married.
Yeah.
That's right. And then he poisoned her. She poisoned him and herself. They were found in bed together.
'Cause she was the mistress.
Yeah. And they were found in bed together dead.
Mm-hmm.
And it was horrific. And so that's what happened to her. And that apparently happened 10 years ago. But who is this woman and who is Norman talking to? And basically, Lila claims that there's no way Arbogast was lying about this. I don't know why she is so sure of him, but she says there's no way. And
well, if that woman...
Yeah. They give the iconic line, well, if that's Norman's mother, then who did we bury? We don't know. And so we go to, basically Sam and Lila say, we're going to go there ourselves. We don't need anybody's help. We're going to go there ourselves. So they go, they check in, and they get to the point where Sam is distracting Norman so that Lila can investigate the house. And there's some back and forth from both scenes. So when Lila investigates the house, she sees Norman's mother's room, or what we assume is the room because it's where the window and everything is that we see her from. The main thing about this room is that there's this most disgusting indent of a body in the bed, like where Norma sleeps.
Yeah, you would think that Norma was like 3,000 pounds.
Yes, like it's just so indented. I do want to say one thing. There is one scene I left out that is somewhat important. At one point, we see Norman arguing with his mother saying, we need to take you to the fruit cellar. People are asking questions. They want to talk to you. You can't be sitting here in the window.
And she's like, no.
Yeah, no. But he carries her down to the fruit cellar.
Yeah, now she's some frail little lady.
It's like she can't even walk.
Yeah.
But before she's out here killing people,
Jumping
running down
around.
the stairs. Yeah, so he carries her down to a fruit cellar. So when Lila goes into the room, she's not there. Lila also sees Norman's room, which is very weird because it's very childish.
Yeah,
there's
there's
lots of like toys,
stuffed
and
animals.
the tiniest twin bed. So it's very weird. And Sam and Norman are talking, and Norman realizes, where's the woman you came with? You know, where is she? I think, and he kind of realizes that she is at the house, or he assumes she's at the house. Sam and Norman have like a little standoff that's extremely stiff and weird, but eventually Norman hits Sam in the head with something, and Sam goes down, and Norman's running up to the house. Well, Lila sees this because she's coming back down the stairs from those bedrooms where she was investigating, so she hides in this little nook under the stairs, which is just another set of stairs, and Norman comes in and runs straight up the stairs. Lila decides to investigate down the stairs that she's currently at, which is probably the fruit cellar.
The cellar for fruit.
Yes. So she goes down there, and as she enters this room, she sees a woman with gray hair in a rocking chair, and she says, "Oh, Mrs. Bates." She turns it around, and it is a corpse. It is not Mrs. I mean, it is Mrs. Bates, but it is dead. Dead Mrs. Bates.
What the heck turned that corpse around?
Didn't she like push it?
Oh, maybe.
I think she pushed it, like touched it, and it turned around. I just love that it still has a full head of hair.
Yeah.
Gray, like a gray hair in a bun. And so, anyways, Lila screams. It's this big event, and a woman runs into the room, but it's not a woman. It is Norman dressed up in his mother's clothes with a gray wig, holding a knife. Well, Sam comes in
with that crazy face. I mean, he's got that
crazy face. Just like, you know, this person's insane. Well, Sam comes in and grabs him, and everything's okay, but we now figure out kind of what's going on. Well, so the very last thing we figure out is kind of what all actually happened, and it's this psychologist who goes into this big speech about what happened, and basically Norman killed the mom and the lover because he was jealous that the lover was taking up so much of his mother's time.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago, and ever since then, in order to keep his mother's spirit alive, he would pretend to be her and have conversations with her, and he developed the, split personality, and the psychologist basically says he is no longer all Norman. He is now all mother and will never be Norman again.
Yeah.
And then the very last scene is Norman in his cell, and we just hear the mother's voice, and it's giving the speech, and it ends with that iconic line, "Why, she wouldn't even harm a fly."
Yeah, and then we get that transition.
And we see just the car being pulled out of the swamp.
Yeah, did you notice the skull kind of in between that?
Where it fades out and you see like the mother's skull over Norman's face, which is great.
Yeah.
Like such great camera effects. One thing I will say, so just real quick about the mother's voice, it isn't that isn't Anthony Perkins doing that voice. That is a mix of two women and a man's voice. Virginia Gree, Paul Jasmine, and Jeanette Nolan. They all do that voice throughout the movie because we're given the impression that Anthony Perkins is putting on that voice, obviously, or Norman is putting on that voice, but it is actually women's voices for the most part. So, anyways, so that's the end of Psycho. It is an incredible movie. I think it's time to give our final thoughts and a score. So, do you want to start?
Yeah, so basically what the scoring system is just a simple score out of 10. Just to kind of give you guys what we think about it individually, and then we can average them out together to make it kind of like a couple score. So I think I'm gonna start pretty high on this. I'm usually a pretty critical analyzer, but this is just a classic, and it had great imagery, great acting, basically everything you could want in a movie. So I think I'll probably give it a 9.2. I mean, just really great movie overall.
Yeah, and I'm going very similarly because it's so iconic and it created slasher films which are so amazing. So I'm going to go a 9.4. I am going a little higher just because I also just love this movie so much. So that makes our couple score a 9.3. That's pretty easy.
Pretty high.
I don't have to do the math that Marion Crane was doing.
Yeah. Write it down.
So, right.
Sky, write it down.
Yeah, 9.2 plus 9.4. Okay. But yeah, it's a great movie. Not necessarily nightmare fuel, but I do think it is scary enough to, freak you out a little bit.
It's an appreciation film too. I mean,
yeah, you just love it so much. So anyways, yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Our next episode will actually be The Birds by Hitchcock. Just going to give you a heads up. So another Hitchcock movie I'm really excited about.
And by watching...
or listening.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But please, if you like this podcast, like listening or watching it, whatever, give us 5 stars and a review. So that'll help us out a lot so that we can continue watching these movies and giving you guys great reviews or giving you guys great content.
We'll review you guys too.
Yeah, we'll make sure you guys are doing your work too.
Yeah.
And also letting us know if there are any movies you want to hear about.
It could be completely obscure or...
Yeah, we're going to be doing a mix of everything. Old, new, awful, all of it. So, all right. So one last thing, as newlyweds, we get a lot of advice. And there's that, iconic thing that people always say, which is never go to bed angry. Well, we kind of have our own piece of advice. And we say always go to bed scared. Get those scary movies on, get the cuddles on. So anyways... thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, thanks